Chapter 76. The amulet was too thin to stop the sharp, sturdy arrow, but whether the defensive magic really worked, it lost its original golden color and was blackened. I looked at it with strange eyes and asked, "This, you didn't throw it away?" "Of course. I thought you'd throw it away. Because I thought you took it away to tease me." The crown prince flopped up one eyebrow in expression of wonder. "Throw away? You can't deal with milestone, once given by someone who shared their feelings." Such a terrible thing to say. It was that moment, shriek, poke. Once again, an arrow flew from somewhere, through the rain and fell into the bottom of a tree above his head. "Ah!" I screamed reflexively, briefly in amazement. At the same time, the crown prince jumped out of his seat. "The queen must be sick again. Come on, get up, princess. You have to avoid it." "Yes?" He yanked my shoulder violently. I didn't understand it at all, even though he spoke, even though he woke up half asleep. "Why me?" "Then, do you want to stay here and be shot to death? If it's the people from the Empress, they're after your highness. So if you go somewhere else, ugh." I couldn't stop saying, "You can go and leave me alone," because the crown prince hugged me in his cape. It was an unbelievable strength for a man who was just shot by an arrow and fell off a horse. He put me on the saddle of the horse like a pack, pushed it up in the wind. The bear's head rolled to the floor, but no one cared. What are you doing?" I was puzzled by what had happened in an instant and asked, "Stop talking nonsense, princess. The only witnesses who came to assassinate the crown prince will be sent back to you." The crown prince jumped on the horse with an irritating glance. "Giddy up," and he pulled the horse's reins tightly, locking me between his arms. He, the red horse began to run like a fire. Poo, 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 poo. At the same time, two arrows crossed from the side this time. The crown prince kicked his tongue as if it were annoying, bowed his head and then dodged them lightly, and hugged me more tightly in his arms as if to protect me. Perhaps because of the urgent situation, it didn't come very moving. Am I being caught up in an assassination now? I just wanted to cry now at the probability of this crazy game. When the clouds were dark, I should have moved away from this fellow without just looking back. Do 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 do. Because of the running horse and the relentless rain, I was completely out of my mind. A group of people chasing the crown prince over his back could be seen dimly. Arrows and citations flew from there, one after another. Chang Kang, the crown prince pulled out the sword at a tremendous rate of reaction and struck out flying arrows and citations. Those bastards, the crown prince who was not able to run away with continuous attacks, covered his brain with abusive language. "It's dangerous, so don't move, princess." Chang, Callisto also struck an arrow and recited low. I felt his body tightened with tension. I was nervous too. No matter how much the main character says he won't die, he could have been hurt enough not to die. Besides, this is not a quest. Without resetting, it is not a game for me, but a reality. Slowly, fear began to moisten my toes. A fierce chase took place on the rainy forest road. The distance was narrowed, enough to recognize the shape of the unknown assailant. A group of humans dressed in black masks and black robes. It was obviously assassins. The other day, I suddenly remembered a shocking scene in which the crown prince cut the head of an assassin brought by him during a banquet of the second prince's birthday. Is this what happens often to the crown prince? This not show up in the normal mode. It was that moment. Suddenly, my eyes brightened. System, main quest, let's be the queen of hunting. Second, protect the crown prince from the assassin. Will you proceed with the quest? Target 20 assassins. Compensation, symbol of assassination, Callisto's favorability, plus 10%. Reputation, plus 50. Accept or reject. A white square window suddenly appeared behind the crown prince's back. Ha, ha, ha. I was so stunned, I laughed like a bird. Soon after, he distorted his face and became angry. "I don't want to be a queen. Besides, 20 assassins." I wanted to hit refuse countless times right away, but I couldn't. The favorability given as a reward was 10%. In normal mode, you can raise it by mixing a few words, but you can't imagine it in hard mode as much as 10%. System. Main quest accepted. Automatic in 5 seconds. System 5. System 4. I ended up crying and preparing to shoot the crossbow in front of me with courage. "Don't move." Perhaps he was bothered by the wriggling on his arms. The crown prince gave me a hard warning. "Your highness." I called him in a gloomy voice. "I think I can help you." "What?" "You know that crossbow." I picked at the hem of the cape and showed it the crossbow that I had turned. "I'll shoot everyone after you, so just cover for me." "Princess, what the hell is that?" Callisto's lips were slopping to speak to more. but I couldn't find time to hear it. Finally, a 5-second grace period has passed. System quest is automatically accepted. 0/20. At the same time, as the white letters in the square window turned into numbers, the body which had been covering in the prince's arms sprang up. I then used his broad shoulders as elbow supports and loaded the crank with a mechanical hand gesture. Shalkak, I heard a pulley clinging to the trigger. Then I closed one eye and aimed at the assassin. The heavy rain that blocked the view and the movement of the horse were no problem for me, or for the system. As soon as an assassin sees me rising up, he tries to aim his bow at me. The index finger on the trigger moved straight away. Tang! Oh, the assassin who aimed disappeared from the horse. I hit it. The head hit the mark without error. I could see a man who fell off the horse convulsed with shock, but I couldn't even feel the joy of looking at it. Chalkak, tang, 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 because my body was busy shooting at the other straight away. Ugh, arg, ick. 7/20. I pulled the trigger and hit the guys who were chasing. In an instant, I killed 7 people. The closely chasing men fell from the horse and crawled on the ground, or the assassins embarrassed by the unexpected counterattack. Quick, whoosh. The arrows began to fly in droves. Pook, pook, pock, pock. Arrows brushed past by a hair's breadth, bloomed in the tree. However, the body, which had lost control, did not give in to the pouring arrow, but shoot the crossbow. Shalkak, tang, tang, tang. 10/20. As soon as the arrow grazed through the temple, I killed 3 more assassins. Come on. By then, I didn't know if this quest really meant to kill the assassin or save me. Suddenly, I felt a sense of incompatibility from the side. The system-occupied body turned violently to that side. Chalkak, tang. Ah, maybe the assassins was approaching from all sides in groups, and one fell to the floor from the tree with his death scream. At that moment, Princess, the Crown Prince, suddenly pulled down my waist and hugged me hard. Quick. Oh, the Crown Prince groaned low. The arrow hit on his left shoulder. Your Highness, one of the assassins who was approaching the side shot an arrow at the left side of the Crown Prince, who was not holding a knife. Tong. After shooting him, I flashed back and aimed at the crossbow. Ari, are you all right? Your Highness, I honestly wanted to faint while shooting at the crossbow. I wanted to look back at his wound, but I couldn't do it by a body that was constantly swayed. What if it's not okay? Quite painful, the Crown Prince said nervously, but he soon added in a subdued voice, Don't be nervous. I'm wearing lightweight armor, so I didn't get deeply shot. Chang, the Crown Prince answered back with a knife for another flying arrows. I was deeply relieved, and I brushed off a little resentment that got me involved in this fucking situation, because if he hadn't just embraced me, it might have been my head to get hit by the arrow. Thank you. I mumbled timidly. It was fortunate that I could move my mouth as I pleased. The Crown Prince talked crookedly. How is that? Isn't this enough for Princess who fully consistent with the reason for Princess Crush cycle to answer me? I'm not the only one. That's a pity. He kicked his tongue at the sharp answer. He seemed fine again when I saw him talking nonsense. I feel a relief. End of chapter 76. Chapter 77. Tang, 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 tang. Since then, I've shot the crossbow frantically under the protection of the Crown Prince. The assassins were quick, different from the big, slow-moving beast. However, the power of the game system was the highest level of shooting the crossbow. The more steadily the number of beads was reduced, the more steadily the number of assassins was reduced. Now there are 4 left. 16/20. Tang. Princess, how many do we have left? Asked the Crown Prince unexpectedly. Just getting one more right. I took a short breath. I think there's about 3 left. Why? It's a dead end. At that moment, the horse that had been running carelessly stopped suddenly. When I rolled my eyes and checked the surrounding area, it was the end of the narrow cliff. It was hard to say anything. It's going to be hard for them to shoot their bows in close distance anyway, so we'd better get down and get rid of the rest down. The Crown Prince muttered so much that he picked me up and got off the horse, and I jumped off too. There were no visible assassins. The system was briefly released, but there were still 3 men left, so I held the crossbow close and guarded against all sides. It's dangerous, so stay behind, said the Crown Prince, blocking my way. It was an unexpected remark from the male lead. However, the quest was protecting the Crown Prince from the assassins. Therefore, I came out from behind him and stood next to him on an equal footing. It's all right. I'll take care of my body, so your Highness can concentrate on preserving your body. He looked back at me with a face like he heard all sorts of strange noises. I'm the only one who's day after, so I'm always reassured. Speechless. I felt a little prick, so I just ignored it and looked toward the forest. The forest was still without realizing it. There was no sign of rain except for the sound of a trace of rain. I stared at the white writing floating in the air, taking the baby hairs off my face because of the bite. 17/20. I wanted to get rid of the other 3 quickly and finish this tedious quest, It was then, weak, as several arrows flew from the bushes just in front of the cliff toward the crown prince. Trying. The crown prince was skillfully fished out the flying things, but as soon as he struck them, the two popped out of the bushes. The men who had taken out the dagger ran straight to the crown prince, who had barely taken all the citations. Your Highness, as soon as I was startled and shouted, the occupied body moved first. Chalkak, tang. Oh, a man hit by a bead, crumbled and crumped, chain. But the other one and the crown prince's sword were met. He was aiming straight ahead to shoot the rest. He overlooked the fact that there was one more person left in the clash that took place in an instant. The last assassin, who was hiding in the bushes as soon as one fell, pulled out a long sword. Dead, you bitch. But it was me, not the crown prince. The system was not optimized for all variables. My body, which was aiming at the one who was competing with the crown prince, turned toward the grotesque side that struck me a bit late, but it was already late. Damn it. Avoid it, princess. At the same time as the crown princess cry comes in, kalkak, bang, I pulled the trigger as soon as the beads were shot out. The sword wielded by the assassin was also a step forward. He must have been knocked down by a bead I shot, but the distance was too close. I've already been through it once, but the system will only execute the shooting of the crossbow whether I die or not. Therefore, I couldn't avoid the sharp knife that was closing in on the air. My eyes closed in a sharp snap, but at that moment, a firm and large thing hugged me, around the time of being pushed back roughly by strong force and heavy weight. Pooh, pooh. There was a shriek and a low moan. I opened my closed eyes. Blood soaked in rain were seen flying. It belonged to the crown prince, who ran away and embraced me after throwing away the sword fight. A knife stuck behind his back, and then an assassin knocked down by a crossbow I shot. It's over now, and another guy running to the end was seen in turn. The whole process proceeded as slowly as ever. I was unable to support the prince's body, who was unable to control his power in a hurry to hit me. My body was pushed helplessly to the edge of the cliff. Princess, I'm sorry. The crown prince, hugging my waist with his hands, whispered in his ears. I think we're on the verge of falling. My hair stood on end. The moment I felt empty behind my back, a dizzying sensation swept through my body. Even at the moment of falling down the cliff, my hand holding the crossbow automatically moved and aimed over the crown prince's shoulder. Bang, arc, 20 over 20. By the time I got rid of the last one, system main quest, let's be the queen of the game. Second, defending the crown prince from assassination. Quest success, system, reward, assassin's badge, Callisto's favor, plus 10%. Fame, plus 50, gained. Fame, total, 130. Crazy. With a white letter set in the background instead of the sky, I and the prince began to fall down to a dark cliff. Ah, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Tadak, tadak. I heard the firewood burning from somewhere. Oh, I opened my eyes vaguely with a hazy view. There was the first spark to be seen. Since then, strange rock walls have also seen. Where is this place? I strained my arms and raised myself from my slouch. Sir, at that moment, the cloth that had been covered over me flowed down, and I felt a cool air on my skin. Heok. Unconsciously lowering my head, I opened my eyes to my exposed shoulders. I hurried through the cloth and found myself naked in my underwear. Moreover, the cloth covered over my body was the crown prince's red cape. What the hell? Are you awake? Then a heavy low pitched sound rang out over there. As I turned my head reflexively, I opened my mouth wide. A hard chest with scars everywhere, bumpy abs. Yes, the crown prince proudly walked this way, naked in his upper body. What are you doing? I was shocked, late, covering my eyes with both hands. What? Why are you walking around naked? He dropped the firewood he had brought by a bonfire. Then he flopped down in front of it and answered casually. Then should I keep walking around in wet clothes? I don't want to do that. What should I do? The one who glanced at me grinned and added, and isn't it the same as a princess who's naked? You filthy. I don't think that's what the beholder should say with all his fingers open. Why don't you just look it up straight? I coughed loudly and slipped my hand down. Then he gave a sneering look. I became falsely accused. It's because I'm afraid I'll have a black heart while blindfolded. I was never meant to see his upper body. Never. Never. I stared closely at the prince's cloak and looked at him with a glance. So, my clothes, your highness. What? He shrugged and confirmed. Thanks to that, we've already in a relationship who have seen everything. Please stop saying such terrible things. I was fed up with his reply. The crown prince looked back at me as if dumbfounded. Isn't that too much for a man who brought you here with so much hard work? So why do you touch a lady's body without permission? Then should I have let you alone whether you'll die or not? Yes. What? You should just let me and have kept to your duty and let it go, or wake me up. Ha! At my reply, he laughed and spat out. You have nothing to see. Now, what did you say? I stammered in amazement at his enormous remarks. I said you had nothing to see. Why? Why do I have nothing to see? So there's a lot to see. Actually, the cave was so dark that I couldn't see it properly. Should we check it out now? You. I managed to swallow a pop-up curse. I'd rather bear it. He's the crown prince, the crown prince, and the crown prince with 2% favorability. I muttered in my mind, engraving, be patient, be patient. And suddenly my eyes grew bigger into white letters that stood out. Favorability, 25%. The changing favorability of the Crown Prince reminded me of a forgotten quest. System, assassinations budge, Callisto's favor plus 10%. Fame plus 50, gained. Fame total 130. The Crown Prince's favorability has become quite far from death. After all, that fucking quest was a success. End of chapter 77. Chapter 78. Looking blankly over Callisto's head, I asked the whole story belatedly. What happened to us? We fell off the cliff. There was a waterfall under the cliff. We could survive without dying because we fell into the river. The crown prince, using a branch as a firecracker, rummaged through the bonfire and answered in an indifferent tone. When I came out carrying you around, I found this cave nearby. Only then did I take a closer look around. We had now set a bonfire not far from the entrance. The rain seemed to have stopped before we knew it, but outside the entrance was dark and I couldn't see an inch ahead. Only the occasional refreshing sound of water proved true that there is a waterfall. I turned my head again and looked inside the cave. It was quite a deep cave, but over the inside there was a dark cloud. What if it's the territory of the beast or a snake? A quite realistic idea crossed to my mind. I felt my hand and found the crossbow lying next to me, but I soon remembered that I used up all my beads to kill the assassins. This is not an animal shelter, the prince added bluntly, as he was looking at my anxious face. While you were asleep, I skimmed through it, and it was strangely empty. Do you know where we are? I asked the most important thing first. Even if the sun goes down and we can't move, we have to go back quickly when the day comes. I had high hopes as he was a native of the imperial palace, but he shook his head mercilessly. We held every hunting contest in the northern forest, but I didn't even know there was a place like this. I sighed. I must be going crazy by now. It was about time when I looked at the prince with a confused face, anticipating out of the forest. That would have been turned over by me, and the prince who had disappeared on one shoulder of his reflected bonfire was a dry cut of blood. It was the place where the commendation was given. At the same time, just before falling off the cliff, I remembered him being stabbed by an assassin's sword. Your body, are you all right? He almost wiped me out and killed me, but it bothered me that he was hurt on my behalf. Are you asking now? You're asking me very early. Thank you for your tears. I was a little embarrassed by the sarcastic remarks. In fact, I wasn't really worried of if male lead would die. Are you seriously hurt? Let me see. No, it's okay. He stopped me coldly as I was about to get up to see the scar. I didn't get deeply caught in it because I was wearing armor. It's just shred little blood. It was a relief, but I couldn't help but frown at the news of blood. I wish we could go back and get some treatment. You're worried, aren't you? Of course. I answered with a straight face. Of course, I wasn't worried about him. Don't die in front of me. Because I only worried for myself. If you want to die, go somewhere else and die. Don't die in front of me. I was muttering inwardly and listened to the gaze. He was staring at me with a queer face, late to realize that there was a room for my words to sound strange to him. My face heated up. It sounds like I'm telling him not to die. I was taken aback and hurriedly changed my words. And speechless. It's late, but thank you for saving me. Anyway, I had to admit it. Apart from the fucking quest, Callisto got hurt on my behalf, and he didn't fling me out after falling off the cliff, and he saved me here. Am I a little off from trouble if we're going to meet? I still remember how crazy he was when he asked me to say goodbye with a knife in my neck. Looking at him anew, I met his red eyes head on. He was still staring at me with an unknown look. I felt a little awkward and turned my eyes first. Favorability 25%. Good feelings have risen. He picked up the corners of his mouth and twisted it up. If you're so grateful, you should fall in love with me again. I frowned at the persistence of another man talk. Your Highness. Talking nonsense again. Isn't this just the right time for the princess to like me? Not at all. I answered immediately. Then I asked again because it was so stuffy. Why the hell are you so obsessed with hearing my reasons? His obsession ended to the point where he even sent a threatening letter saying, Don't forget your promise to tell me why you like me. At my question, the crown prince made a more ridiculous expression than I did. I can't stand wondering why the princess suddenly came after me that day and confessed her love. Well, I couldn't say I tried to die once to see if there was a reset button. I opened my mouth with tears of blood in my past when I made such a gibberish to avoid another moment's crisis. I must have been out of my mind at the time. I'm sorry, Your Highness. Huh, the Crown Prince laughed coldly. I've been waiting for weeks because I want to listen to it, and you suddenly changed in the middle and say you hated me. So wouldn't it be unfair if Princess were me? There was a burning desire to refute who the iron poison was from, but I didn't want to dwell on the terrible memory of the day anymore. So I corrected his excessive sulling. I didn't say I hate you. So you're saying you still like me? No. I changed my words again with a shiver. Then tell me about the reason that I suddenly hated. Because I don't want to talk to you all day long about that reason. However, the Crown Prince grinned like a ghost as he revealed his teeth. It's a perfect topic to talk to alone in the torture chamber of the Imperial Palace's underground prison for defaming the Imperial family. Isn't that right? Scary bastard. I shut my mouth in amazement. A cool silence fell in the cave once. It was when I stared blankly at the end of the campfire dancing, wondering how the hell had happened. Why do you hate it? The silent crown prince asked abruptly. Yes? Why did you suddenly change your mind? You said it was an insult to the imperial family. I'll let you off this one time, so tell me. I stared at him in a daze and soon crumpled my face. Are you sure you don't know? Then he was a villain in the world. He tried to kill me. Now that he'd said he'll let it go. I've taken a bold shot at the reason. That's why I hit X countless times in the first place. What kind of crazy woman would like a madman who tries to kill in common sense? But the Crown Prince had a look of complete ignorance in my answer. When did I? When did you? When? I couldn't have been more puzzled. After a moment of poking my mouth, I shouted. That day, the birthday party of the second prince in the maze garden, the Crown Prince tried to hit my neck with a knife. That's how much I had been struggling for days with all kinds of nightmares. If I didn't look like a sick girl with a bandage through my neck, would I have passed the Duke and Derek without much scolding? That's, in my words, the Crown Prince had a rare, bewildered expression. I didn't really mean to kill you. Don't be X. I couldn't spit it out with my mouth, and I looked at him with eyes that revealed my thoughts, without filtration. When playing the game, I died so much in the maze garden that I couldn't proceed with the Crown Prince route. It was when I felt like a real dog. There was nothing noticeable, so I would pull the sword if anyone come. The prince who did not know my thoughts recited as an excuse. But didn't Princess stay alive because I got interested in the sound of Princess liking me? I'm so touched that my hands and feet tremble and my tears will drop, Your Highness. Are you being sarcastic? There's no way. I turned my head in a curt reply. However, despite my attitude to cut off the conversation, the prince did not know that it was over. Then tell me why you fell in love with me. Ha! I already told you then. I sighed deeply and murmured in a weary voice. Because of your highness' good looks, your bravery, and your skills of the sword. Don't talk with insincere like that. You think I'm an eyeless idiot? You think I'm an idiot? The crown prince flashed red eyes at my insincere attitude. You make that face when you see me, and you want me to believe it now. What's wrong with my face? You look like you've chewed up dog poop. Speechless. He saw it well, so that I had nothing to say. Seeing me speechless, the prince persuaded me with a slightly muted voice. Tell me honestly, did anyone threaten to kill you if you didn't confess? I thought I'd rather do it. I don't know why I said such a rude thing at the time, but if he kept questioning me about the reason, what kind of answer should I say? Speechless, I looked at the crown prince with eyes that almost shot me to death and said anything with resignation. I liked your hair color. End of chapter 78. Chapter 79. The Crown Prince's eyes grew slightly. What? When I saw your highness at the banquet for your highness return, I managed to change the first meeting so as not to create a sense of incompatibility. Actually, the first time I saw the Crown Prince was during the second prince's birthday banquet. Therefore, the prince of the day was naturally pictured in my head, a tall man who proudly crossed the red carpet with a red cape flying. Your hair is shiny because it's reflected in the chandelier's light. It was like a golden powder floating around. Until I found the assassin he was dragging, I thought he was a real royal figure. The reality of the prince, who was only seen as an illustration, was shockingly noble and overwhelming. I let out the impression I had then, and your highness eyes looked like they had a ruby in them. So they looked like they were glamour. Glamour? The crown prince asked back with the amazing tone. Is that the reason you fell in love with me at first sight? People like they looked had some money. I didn't really fall in love at all, so instead of being positive, I answered moderately. I like jewelry. Gold too, of course. Huh. Whether the much awaited reason for was absurd, the Crown Prince continued to blow in vain. You're so. The Crown Prince muttered to himself, looking at me with an unknown face. Weird woman. Speechless. You're so weird. At the same time, his head glistened. Favorability, 29%. He said I'm weird, but why the favorability rise? But you're more weird. Weird. I asked sourly because I felt ungrateful. That's enough, right? I'm done talking, so don't ask me anymore. Huh. The Crown Prince stared at me for a long time and laughed in vain and said with a chin, we have to get out of the woods as soon as dawns, so I'll go to bed. It seemed to me that he had a rough understanding of the reason I had made up. Good night, Your Highness. As if I had been waiting for the speak, I turned my back and lay down right away. I heard him kicking his tongue in the back, but I pretended not to hear it. Finally, free. I closed my eyes with a light heart at the thought that I had finally escaped his obsession. As I was covering the Crown Prince's cloak, it occurred to me that he had to sleep in nothing but his trousers. But I did not care. It's none of my business. Even though I had fainted and woken up, I was very tired and exhausted. Today was really, really spectacular. How many things have happened since early in the morning? If I played the game this way every day, I thought I would die even before I got a good ending. No, 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 no. I went to sleep with a torrent of ominous ideas. However, I couldn't sleep even after time passed. I closed my eyes and counted the number, imagining the amount spread out in the meadow. 9, 10, 11, 12. The more sheep I counted, the more I falling into the unconscious world. 11, 10, 9. The sheep that had sprung up on the meadow suddenly began to shrink. Woo doo 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 because something huge ate each and every sheep that was farthest away. The sheep that roamed the lawn shrunk at a rapid pace, finally eating all the sheep, and something huge came before me. Dripping with blood, it immediately raised its hand above me. Woo woo, the paws are coming every minute. It's the one who cries with his mouth wide open to eat me. It was the head of a monster bear. Woo woo. Heyok. I flapped my body and opened my eyes wide. The monster bear was nowhere to be found, even though it rolled the eye reflexively around. The sound of a burning bonfire. It was still in a dark cave. That's a relief. I rose from my seat with a shadowed gasp. Then I made eye contact with a man who was searching for a campfire with a fire. Oh, aren't you sleeping, Your Highness? The Crown Prince sitting in his seat earlier looked at me with surprise for a moment, then he answered curtly, "It would be nice if we slept together and became a good beast's food, yes." It was also a great ability to say that he was going to be on a night watch. I was dazed by the reliable appearance of an unexpected man. Then the prince suddenly opened his mouth. "You can't sleep, huh?" "What?" "Oh, yeah." I couldn't bear to say that I had a nightmare and woke up, so I roughly equivocate. Judging from his unchanging posture or dark vision, he seemed to have fallen asleep for a short time. Even though I was completely awake, my head was still numb. It's cold. A chill suddenly struck me. The weak body and the fact that having body weight and fell into the river seemed to have had a very bad effect. I crouched down in front of the campfire, with cape tightly folded. It was to enjoy the fire. Speechless, the prince looked at me and raised one eyebrow and said nothing. But even sitting in front of the fire, the cold didn't go away. What's wrong with this? Far from getting better. My body trembled, even when I felt it. I couldn't control myself. It was belatedly recognized that this was not only because of the cold. When I go back, do I have to take a sedative or something? I was originally dull of feeling, and the after effects were so late, just as if I could not control my trembling hands in front of Winter after defeating the beast the day before. The trauma of the situation that I was surprised to the extent that I didn't know came like an aftermath now. In fact, it was a strange day that none of them were surprising. A bear wielding its front legs, a crown prince falling down by an arrow, and assassins who were closely chasing after him. Is it cold? I thought he wouldn't notice because I was covered in a cloak, but the crown prince immediately noticed my ideal. What? No, I denied. I didn't want to be informed of my condition like this. But the crown prince, with a suspicious face, has some firewood lying next to him in the bonfire. He put in more branches. Hua, ugh. The fire is even stronger, but still the tremors did not stop. Kick. That's a hassle too. At that moment, the crown prince sprang up from his seat. The strong upper body, which had been hard to see due to the shadow of the fire, was revealed. Kya, what are you doing? I shrieked small and covered my eyes with both hands. Of course, I had a wide open his index finger to see what he was doing. The crown prince strode around the bonfire toward me. Don't do anything ridiculous and step aside. I was very embarrassed by his sudden behavior. Why, what's wrong with you? Wouldn't you get out of the way? He flung up his eyebrows and pressed fiercely. But when I didn't intend to move, he flung myself on the floor and pushed my body violently. Your Highness. I jumped up in a panic. It was to run away to the other side, which was originally his seat. But even I couldn't do it because he pulled the end of the cape I was wearing. Oh, with the terminal, I fell helplessly. My eyes were shut at the thought of falling on the hard floor, but where I fell, not on the cold cave floor, huh? It was in the arms of the crown prince. I could feel the hot heat coming out of other people's bodies. The body was tight with only one layer of cape in between. Hawk, what the hell is going on here? I hardened like a tree, with my mouth wide open. What are you doing? Please let go. I came to my senses a step later and struggled to get out of his arms, but his forearm, which was strangling my back, did not budge. How rude! How dare you to the crown prince of the empire, huh? He talked without changing single face. Don't struggle and stay still. I'm not doing this because I like princesses. Then then let go. What kind of molestation? I don't know what hard thoughts you had in your head, but get off. My voice said him, as a molester hardened the face as if the prince was displeased. When you are isolated from the battlefield, it is most important to maintain the temperature of your friends among the battlefields. We often feel the cold, but we usually run a few hours apart. Speechless, I paused at the remark. The reason why he suddenly came and hugged me was quite reasonable. Looking at the face again, the way he looked at me as if he was really unwilling to do it seemed so uncomfortable. He almost killed me not long ago, so no matter how much it's a game, it can't be the happening like that. If it were a normal mode, female lead, I wouldn't know. There was not the slightest chance that such a strange air would bloom between me and the crown prince. No, but I'm not. But I'm the one who suddenly got humiliated. But why does he make a face that he hates me? That he hates more? He looked strangely offended, saying, "I understand his behavior, but reluctantly." I grumbled in a sulky voice, "This isn't a battlefield. Then you can hold out and die of hypothermia an hour later." Speechless, I shut my mouth hard and at the curse. Otherwise, he seemed to say something that would be worth cutting off the 29% he had barely put up. The silence fell again in the cave where the crown prince and I had once passed. It was when he was staring at the wall advisor over the campfire, awkwardly holding myself in his arms. "Why do you keep shaking like a dog?" he asked. "I don't understand." Narrowing the gap between my eyes at the same time, the arms around the waist were also hard pressed. End of chapter 79. Chapter 80. The vibration seemed to have been transmitted with a touching body to the shame of the body to avoid showing as much as possible. What a shiver. I distorted my face by his poor choice of language, but I didn't have the energy to get angry, so I replied helplessly, "Not just because it's cold." Then, the prince inquired quickly, Just? I tried to gloss over it, but it didn't work for a man of extraordinary tenacity. I held and rubbed the cold hands trembling intermittently under the crown prince's large cape, and tried to pretend nothing was wrong. When I closed my eyes, I kept thinking about what happened earlier. What happened earlier? The Crown Prince frowned and said, to see if he thought of something soon. "When you fall off the cliff. Oh, I thought you were fainting as soon as we fell. Look like that's not." Speechless. "Or you mean when you almost got hit by a bear while coming forward without fear?" "Ha, yes. Now I'm tired of reacting to everything." I trembled like a dog because I came forward without fear and almost got hit by the bear. I muttered in a voice that was beyond measure for a person who was shaking with fear. With a deep sigh and an exaggerated admission, there was no further noise from the crown prince. "I thought you'd say crazy dog ever does that." "I thought you'd be sarcastic, unexpected." In the cozy cave, where the bonfire rose, peace and sleep came, certainly as I talked to the crown prince and gradually came to my senses. The cold and trembling that had been severe to the end of my head gradually subsided. However, as if replacing the position, a heavy fatigue came. I leaned my head against the thick forearms around my ears. He hugged me first without my consent, so he should at least play the role of a pillow. It was around the time when only the eyelids were slowly blinking, when I was a kid. Suddenly a sigh of voice came from the bedside. I was too lazy to turn my head, so I only turned my eyes and checked. The prince looked down at me with a subtle look and then opened his mouth again. I think I was about 9 or 10. Speechless, I've encountered a bear about the same size that the princess encountered today in this forest. The bear? Yes, I wondered why he brought up such a story out of the blue, but I heard his story quietly. There was once a time when the second prince's birthday overlapped with the hunting contest. When I first saw my brother, the crown prince's eyes became a little dim as he recalled that time. The figure made him feel a little bit human, but it was a snap. Callisto immediately twisted his lips and put on a fierce look. As a kid, I thought I could harm a newborn baby, so I couldn't see a single hair because the queen had been wrapped up for years. Speechless, all the nobles gathered to attend the hunting competition, but it was only nominal. Gifts for the second prince were lined up throughout the tournament. Speechless, I was the only one who took part in the position empty-handed. His muttering face had suddenly became hollow. Looking back, he looked a little disappointed. I wanted to give my one and only brother a nice present. Speechless, so in spite of the opposition of the father, I sneaked into the hunting ground with a bow. Speechless, I was going to catch a little animal like a rabbit and give it to him as a gift. Callisto soon recovered his spirits as if he had felt despondent. His face smiling back at me was so mischievous. I can't believe he had such a naive and sad time. Somehow, the fact seemed quite strange. I looked strangely at the crown prince who told me a story. In any case, I was so busy dying that I lacked much information about the male lead in his hard mode. In order to survive in the future, it was better to pick up anything and use it. Therefore, I carefully engraved the childhood that crown prince confided in me. I did find prey that I liked, but it ran away so quickly that the arrow didn't hit it. I was chasing after the prey and unwittingly came into the deep woods, speechless, and ran into a bear. I was a little surprised. It was a very similar story to what I had today. The crown prince, who noticed my interest, continued his words without a break. I couldn't even shoot an arrow at the bear running, unlike the princess. Speechless, I was horribly scared. I just managed to escape just before I got hit by its front foot. You ran into it when you was a lot younger than I am now, right? To the self-contradictory tone of Callisto, I blinked my eyes and answered back. Ahead of the coming of age ceremony, I'm also shaking because of the fear of meeting a bear is still lingering. Only 9 or 10 years old. What was the fear of the crown prince, who would have faced a huge beast at that young age? It happened to be a comforting aspect, but Callisto shook his head firmly. Age doesn't matter to the heir of the throne. The emperor must always be flawless. But in addition, I did not avoid it completely, but stupidly. His claws brushed against my arms. If it were a little later, it wouldn't have stopped at tearing, but this arm would have been blown away. I was lucky. Ugh. I was fed up with the cruel description of my left arm. The crown prince drew the corners of his mouth as if it was funny to see me like that. I'm running away frantically, avoiding the monster that's chased, and suddenly an arrow came from the other side. Are the guards there? I thought so at first. The crown prince suddenly narrowed the middle of his finger. On the way, I ran to a dying lion, and the assassins in black suits shot me with a bow. Assassin? They sent to kill a 10-year-old child. I opened my mouth to his calm explanation. If you were the crown prince, you wouldn't know. Is it really normal to release dozens of assassins on the hunting ground to kill a child? 20 assassins encountered today came to mind. It's something you're going through often. Somehow, suddenly, facing the assassin in the middle of the hunting ground, the crown prince was surprisingly calm and cool. The tyrant's childhood, which had not been detailed in the game, was worse than expected. Who sent it? Well, in the end, the investigation ended in smoke, and it wasn't clear who was responsible for the assassination. But he stroked his chin with one hand, and suddenly his red eyes flashed. It must have been sent by the empress of a foreign country, without having to disclose it. The second prince was a poor kid who couldn't even write properly at that time. I could not feel the handful of affection in the voice of calling the one and only brother. I was suddenly worried. But the story right now, can you tell this to me? What's wrong with that? It's not like you're going to come the second prince and joining him. Even so, I don't know what useful from the story. I was angry, but he was right. But why are my fists clenching up? Since he was a child, he had his personality destroyed. Once again, I was deeply convinced by the formation of his character and sent a look of hastening the story. So, anyway, I'm running away from the bear towards the assassins who came to kill me, and suddenly I was hit in the chest by the bow. They shot and fell to the slope. Chest? Yes, fortunately I didn't die because of my mother's belongings I had on my neck. I looked reflexively down and looked around Callisto's neck. But not to mention the belonging. They were only hard bare chests without a piece of cloth. I didn't use it now. I couldn't use it after that, so I kept it separately. The crown prince laughed and mocked. Are you done with seeing appearances? Ahem. His face glowed belatedly. I turned my head hurriedly, coughing in vain. So what happened next? What about the bear that chasing? When I tried to turn the topic around, the crown prince was picky, sneaky, and gentle. It's funny, but surprisingly, thanks to the fall down the slope, the bear I was chasing passed over me and ran to the assassins. He wrenched the corners of his mouth up again, as if he thought of that time. It was a bloody fight. The bear was very intelligent. He fought well against 10 men with weapons. Crew. Somewhere, the bear's howling sounded. A giant monster bear that's going crazy. The image of a young prince watching the assassins being swept away by the bear's wielding feet was depicted. So, who won? The crown prince answered immediately with a blank face. Both have been wiped out. Both the assassins were outnumbered, but they didn't have close-range weapons to minimize the race. Speechless. On the contrary, the bear swept them away and won. But the poison on the arrow spread and eventually died. After all, it was only the young prince who survived the scene of the great slaughter. I survived, and what do you think I did next? This time, the crown prince suddenly asked me a question. Speechless, my lips were chapped, and I couldn't answer anything. What did you do? If it were me, I would have fled desperately by the time the bears and assassins clashed and had already escaped the forest. I cut off the dead bear's neck. However, the young prince, who heard through the mouth of the person concerned, committed an unexpected act and proudly won the hunt. Speechless. After the ceremony, the head of the bear that I brought with me was thrown into a pile of second prince's birthday presents. It was quite a spectacle to see the blood that hasn't cooled down yet. End of chapter 80.